بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Inshallah, tonight we'll begin a new text. Alhamdulillah, we completed the last poem on the Islamic etiquette and manners, and today inshallah we'll begin a subject closely related, but in reality something that would benefit all of us, no matter what level of knowledge we may have, or what walk of life we might be in, or how often we attend lessons. It's a book for everyone, those at home, those in the masjid, male and female, young and old. And it's a book written by a scholar many of us are familiar with, Shaykh Imam Abdur-Rahmaan bin Nasir al-Sa'idi rahimahullah, who died 1376 Hijri. A book which inshallah today we'll introduce and we'll talk or read a little bit from it and explain. And it's entitled الوسائل المفيدة للحياة السعيدة, or in English it's translated different ways, how to achieve happiness, or the beneficial means to obtain a happy life. The beneficial means to obtain a happy life. And this book, it's a book that is on the subject of happiness. Today, psychologists, they call it the science of happiness, or happiness science. And it's very important because in the self-help genre, this topic particularly is widely growing. Until now, psychology departments have separated it, study. You go online, you see magazines, you see books just on happiness science, what makes people happy, and how, by extension, you can become happy. So if you want to regard this book as some ways as Islamic self-help, it wouldn't be far. And so this book, Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he teaches us how we can become happy people despite whatever situation you are in life. He also teaches us how we can improve our mental health, how we can improve our understanding of the world, in light of the Quran and the Sunnah, and the understanding of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Before we begin reading the book, it's very important to know the story behind the book. Every book has a story. Every scholar, when they write, you have to know how did they write this book? What conditions were they in? And more importantly, what was the objective behind the book? So our scholars, when they talk about this book, they mention this story, and you can find this story. Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he took the idea of this book and a lot of its contents from a book written by a non-Muslim self-help expert named Dale Carnegie. Many of you, if you know anything about books, you know How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. This book particularly, this is the book Imam Sa'di he read. And he was so amazed and touched by it, he wrote his book off the back of it, but obviously in Islamic way. And Dale Carnegie, he wrote this book in 1948, or was published in 1948. It's a bestseller. He's also the author of How to Influence People, How to Win Friends and Influence Others. You probably heard this book as well. And we're going to see it's a good book to read. This book in particular, because Imam Sa'di also held the opinion that it was a good book. But the story behind it is mentioned by his son, Muhammad bin Abdur-Rahmaan bin Nasir al-Sa'idi, in his book مواقف اجتماعية من حياة الشيخ علامة عبد-الرحمن بن ناصر السعدي. The biography of Shaykh Sa'di, his son Muhammad, he writes on page 129 and 130 how the Shaykh wrote this book and why. And the story behind it is just as fascinating as the book. And we're going to take some lessons from this. He says, the son of the Shaykh, Hafidhullah, that one day the Shaykh found himself in the hospital in Lebanon. Shaykh went to Lebanon to get some treatment. He used to live in Unayza in Saudi Arabia. And while there, the Shaykh was in the hospital for duration. He found in the library of the hospital the book, which we mentioned, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. So he read it. And he realized Dale Carnegie was like a trainer. He trains people on how to improve their life. In fact, Dale Carnegie himself had a tough life, and how he wrote this book to help himself besides others. So what happened was, Imam Sa'di, he read the book, he was so amazed by it and what's in it. He bought himself a copy after being discharged from the hospital, and he took it with him to Saudi Arabia, and he put it in the maktaba that he had in Unayza. And he said, after reading the book, this man's a just man. Because of what he writes in there, you will see, Dale Carnegie, even as a non-Muslim, he mentions ways to be happy that are not only materialistic. So Imam Sa'di realized this is just. So when he took the book, he says, when he bought his own copy, the Shaykh, he brought it home with him. And the Shaykh realized when he had this book that he is a friend of his in Unayza who was suffering from mental illness for over 2 years. And he wanted to benefit this friend of his, so he told him, here, read this book. This book, the Dale Carnegie. He said, read the book, فهو مفيد جدا. And it's very beneficial. And his friend, he read the book by Carnegie, and he himself started to improve his mental health after reading Dale Carnegie's book. And until the point he mentioned he became cured, his friend, from a lot of the problems that he was suffering from. And Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, noticing this, how this book can help people change their mental health or improve it, he told his son one day to go, or one of his students, to go to the market, buy some paper and pens, and the Shaykh's going to write his own version of the book, which then he wrote, which is called الوسائل المفيدة الحياة السعيدة, the one we have in front of us today. And the Shaykh then, he mentions his son, that Imam Sa'di, when he wrote this book, his obviously objective was to bring what was inside Carnegie's book, but in light of the Quran and Sunnah, because a lot of what he mentioned there is in line with it. But also, the Shaykh wrote the book as a cure for depression and mental illnesses of various types. Pay attention, brothers and sisters. This book itself, if you listen to it and you read it, you should buy it. You read it and you'll benefit a lot. The Shaykh then, his son, the son of the Shaykh, he says, the Shaykh's book became itself a bestseller. More than 10 different editions were published. He says one edition by itself, 50,000 copies were sold alone. And it was being distributed for free. I mean, Dale Carnegie's book, 6 million were sold. Sa'di's at least one copy, 50,000 by itself. Now, of course, it's Allah Alam how many. And this story, we said the Shaykh's son mentions, is the backstory behind the book. And it's not only his son who mentioned it, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah also mentioned it, his student. In Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari, Kitab al-Adhan, tape 1, side A, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin was talking about different benefits. And one student raised the issue, and the Shaykh mentioned that our Shaykh Sa'di has a book, and he mentioned this book. And then Ibn Uthaymin said he also has a second book, which you can also find in English, Ad-Din al-Islami yuhillu jami' al-mashakil, that Islamic religion cures all problems. I don't know if it's that one is in Arabic or another one, sorry, English, or another one similar to it. But there's two books. Imam Ibn Uthaymin mentioned the Shaykh wrote two small books, and the Shaykh said he took it from this book by Dale Carnegie, and our Shaykh, he wrote it, his version based on this, because of the benefit in it. So the story behind this book is very inspiring, because it teaches us the Shaykh's objective to cure people from mental illnesses and their worries, but also the fact that Shaykh took inspiration from a book from a non-Muslim because there was benefit in it, but also because what the benefit he found in there aligned with the Quran and Sunnah, and we're going to explain this point. If you compare both books, Carnegie's book and Shaykh Sa'di's book, you find a lot of overlap. In total, Shaykh Sa'di mentions in this book about 16 different ways on how to live a happier life. 16. 8 chapters, 2 sub-chapters, sub-points underneath each. But I went to the Carnegie's book and I compared to see where Imam Sa'di took some ideas and where the Shaykh's work had. And of course the Shaykh has Quran and Sunnah, and the Carnegie just has stories or just statements. And obviously it's not an exhaustive list because they didn't have that much time, but in chapter 5, for example, Imam Sa'di has a chapter, Imagine the Worst Situations. Right? One way to deal with the problems or issues we'll learn is to worry about the worst situation beforehand. We're going to get to that. Chapter 5, Carnegie has the same point. Worrying is harmful to your health. Carnegie teaches and Sa'di agrees. Keeping busy or occupying oneself in useful activities is a way to happiness. Chapter number 2, from Sa'di's book, Carnegie has the same point. Occupying oneself with the present. And don't worry about the past, worry about the present. Expect ingratitude. Page 43. Wallahi, when you read the titles even, sometimes you wonder, subhanAllah, just want to read it yourself. Expect ingratitude from people. Next, create happiness for others, being good to others, which is page 23 of Sa'di's book. And the last one, which is very interesting, and this is probably why Imam Sa'di rahimahullah had a favorable view of Carnegie's work, that prayer is from the cures or the ways of happiness. Pay attention. Carnegie mentions dua or salah as a cure. Even if we say in his Christian mind, prayer. And so this is a powerful point to show that when Sa'di read the book, what amazed him wasn't the fact that the author himself maybe was a non-Muslim, but what's interesting what he found in there. But also because of Shaykh's knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah, and Shaykh Sa'di is a specialist in the works of Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah Ibn Qayyim. So this is what inspired him, because as we're going to read, a lot of Carnegie said, Ibn Taymiyyah Ibn Qayyim said before him. Inshallah, we will get to that as we go along. Fa'idah, benefit from this backstory. Imam Sa'di rahimahullah read self-help books. And many of us might find ourselves reading self-help. There's no shame in that. Someone may say, well, should I read a book of a non-Muslim? No aib. No wrong. It's not embarrassing. Because they have benefit too. Maybe something psychological, economical, you can take. And this is because if it's in line with the Quran and Sunnah, then there's no harm in taking from non-Muslims from beneficial knowledge. Some people may view that it's unacceptable to read these things. Why do I need to help a person who's not a Muslim? That wasn't the approach of the ulama, and not the approach of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's a statement that many of us we know, but the ulama they mention. It's not a hadith per se. It is a hadith marfu' da'if, but it's a statement of Salaf. Al-hikmatu daratul mu'min. That wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Many of the Salaf would say that. Hikmah, wisdom, is the lost property of the believer. Wherever you find it, you take it. Means if today we go and we find something on the news, we find something your co-worker told you, your family told you, the person in the street told you, and it's in line with the Quran and Sunnah, benefit from it. And so from here, we need to remind ourselves that Carnegie is the author. But we're going to judge his contents based on what he writes, not just because he's not a Muslim. And now, from this point I want to highlight is where it's permissible in Islam to take knowledge, to take science. And when I say knowledge, it's like worldly benefits, not religious knowledge. Because the non-Muslim, they don't know Islam. They know science and math and economics and all other dunya sciences. You can take benefit from these things from them without any harm, provided that it's in line with the Quran and Sunnah, or at least not against it. And you find this practice widely, right? We're sharing information all the time in the modern world. And I'll bring you now hadith, fa'idah. Hadith Sahih Muslim 1442. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, one day he was discussing or looking into a medical issue. It's called al-ghila, which is a man having intimacy with his wife when she's in the state of nursing a young child. Ulama, they talk about this. The Prophet ﷺ was thinking about, is it healthy for a man and woman, a husband and wife, to have intimacy while the mother is in a state where she's nursing a younger child? Means is intimacy going to harm the breast milk or not? Nabi ﷺ was thinking about this. And then he mentions the hadith in summary. The Prophet ﷺ checked what the Persians, the Romans were doing. And he found no harm in them and when they practiced this. It means scientifically, medically, they didn't get affected by it. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't prohibit it. On the Romans and Persians, not Muslims. Here, Shaykh Mu'athaymin in Sharh Bulugh al-Maram, page 4, volume 4, page 572, he says from the benefits of this hadith is the permissibility of taking a knowledge, of the worldly knowledge from disbelievers, if there's a benefit, and there's no harm on a person in taking from disbelievers, whether it's benefit to take or harm to leave off. Very important, because again, if you go and read a science book and you find a benefit, it's yours to take it. But somebody may say, oh, we can't, it's not Muslim, or they may even think, why should I read self-help? Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he read and he found it was beneficial, and what he did was he measured ala kitab al-sunnah, ala kitab al-sunnah. That's what the Muslim does. We read anything, we listen to anything, we filter it based on the Quran and Sunnah. If it's wrong from that angle, we leave it. If it's in line with it, we take the idea, we defend it from our sources. So this is a great benefit to me, because many of us, I'm sure, we read self-help, so you don't have to feel guilty. Sa'di he read, rahimahullah. And secondly, if you benefit something, there's no harm in attributing the benefit to the one you took it from. This is from Islam. Even if a non-Muslim told you something, it's beneficial, you say that person said it. But we know to the academic research. And all right, I'm going to finish this part of the introduction with some lines of poetry from the poet. لا تحقرن الرأي وهو موافق حكم الصواب إذ أتى بالناقص فالدر وهو أجل شيء يقتنى ما حط قيمته هوان الغائس. The poet, he says, do not belittle a correct opinion. A correct opinion which is aligned with correctness, or is a correct opinion, if it came from one who was naqis, who was deficient in him or herself. For pearls, which are the most precious of things, are not degraded due to the lowliness of the diver. Right, following me? When you go and get pearls, do you care who got it out of the water? Right? When you buy the pearls in the store, you don't say who got this pearl, Muslim, non-Muslim, and you don't worry about how low he went. At the end, you measure the pearl for itself. Faida, that in the day, Muslim, we are more just, and we have to be just too. Now that we understand the backstory of this book, how did our scholars treat this book? Sa'di, rahimahullah, many of us, we know is a big imam. In our time, some ulama say he's from the Mujaddideen of our time. From the Mujaddideen, one of those who revived Islam in our era. Many of our contemporary scholars explain this book. For example, in audio form, Shaykh Salih al-Suhaimi, Hafidhullah, Shaykh Abdur-Razzaq al-Badr, Hafidhullah, and in print form, Shaykh Hamad bin Ibrahim al-Uthman from Kuwait. He wrote a print version of this book, explanation in 285 pages. For those of us who have the book, it's no more than 40 pages. He did 285. And what he put in there? All Ibn Qayyim Ibn Taymiyyah, Kitab al-Sunnah. Which shows you that this topic, we'll find quickly, has a lot to do with Islam. So, the translation of this book, before we begin reading, there's more than one translation. I have one here from Dar al-Salam, I think it's Dar al-Salam translation. Right, so there's one translation like this, small one. And then the one that we'll be using is the one from Dar al-Sunnah in Birmingham. Right, there's a more recent. And they titled the book differently. They called it The 8 Steps to Happiness. Right, so they kind of made it more self-help oriented. But we'll use their print because their print has some more Arabic words and more appendixes, so you can benefit from it. But if you use this print as well, that's fine. But I found that this print, the Dar al-Sunnah one, is available online, PDF. I think many of you probably have it now. Whereas this one, it's only for purchase. So either way, it's okay. And again, I advise the brothers before beginning to buy this book and to buy Dale Carnegie's book, both of them, for you'll benefit a lot. Especially when you read Sa'di's book, everyone should have a copy. It's a good gift to give to people. But wallahi, when you read the book, it helps so many people change their life, as we'll see, just like it helped others. The author, we're going to begin reading, inshallah, and we'll comment as we go along. Today, maybe we'll do just the author's introduction. But like we said, the organization of the book, about 8 chapters. And he has about 16 different ways to gain happiness. So we'll begin page 15, which is the author's introduction of the English. If you have the English on PDF or print, we'll begin from there. The author starts in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise be to Allah, for Him are all praises. There is no deity worthy of worship but Him alone, without any partners. Peace and blessings be upon His final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his family, companions, and all those who follow his guidance from the believers till the last day. So the author obviously begins, like all the scholars begin, with the basmalah, and then with the hamd of Allah, praising Allah, and sending salutation to the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then sending or asking Allah to bless the companions and the followers of Islam. And we know this format of beginning is for any book, even a book like this. Someone will say this book is religious, but it's also dunya in some ways. It's okay. Anything you begin with this, you get the barakah. And I remind the brothers and sisters, the hadith in the Sunan Sahih, the Prophet ﷺ told us, anyone who doesn't begin with the tashahhud, i.e. beginning by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, exalting Him, and then sending salutation to the Messenger ﷺ, any khutbah, or any lecture, or any particular benefit, he doesn't have this, فَهُوَ كَرْيَةُ الْجَذْمَاء. It's like a hand cut off. No barakah. So we have to remember, if you also want to gain barakah, you begin like this, and this is all across the board. The author then, he says, rahimahullah, there is no doubt or illusion that happiness is sought by every person from every walk of life. Yet how is it sought remains the key for many of us to understand in pursuit of it. Some find joy in accumulating wealth, hoping this will fill the void of being content. For others, it is indulging in faulty entertainment, vices and promiscuity, and anything that might distract attention away from the reality, even if it's considered unlawful or immoral. Others drown it in bottles of alcohol or in the sounds of the decadent music industry, each witnessing and seeking something that will lure them out of the states of grief and anxiety. So here the author, he begins, rahimahullah, by telling us that the people, how they begin to seek happiness is different. But everyone wants happiness. It's a human goal, agreed upon shared goal. And in reality, happiness is so important. Like we said, everyone wants to study it, to learn it, to achieve it, but they differ on how to get it. Some people taking an approach through wealth. As we'll see through this book, it's not sufficient. It's a type of happiness, but only one angle. Others, they will do things like entertainment or haram, zina, and like this. And that is not happiness at all. And the difference between seeking happiness through money is different than seeking happiness through haram. For Allah tells in Surah Yunus that the reward for sin is sin like it, and Allah will envelope that person with humiliation. Sins breed other sins. Sins breed humiliation, not happiness. So you might find someone who might be doing haram thinking they'll be happy, only to find out they're more depressed. Shaykh says others, they look towards alcohol. They drink. They try to drink their problems away. Or alcohol in Islam, khamr is more than that. It's intoxicants, narcotics, drugs. You smoke your life away, thinking that it's going to help you. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, khamr ummul khaba'ith, that khamr, intoxicants, are the mother of all evil. So imagine people seeking happiness in that which is a disease, not a cure. And the Shaykh says at the end, others, they try to use music. And this is important because some people think music's the cure. I will drown my sadness, my worries away with high-pitched noises and frequencies that penetrate your brain. And wallahi, when you see what music it does to a person versus what it doesn't do, in reality it doesn't benefit. It just creates more and more attraction, addiction towards it. It doesn't make you happy. And part of this, we see that if these means are achieved, the Shaykh says they try to lure themselves out of grief and anxiety, but they don't. So the first benefit is happiness. Everyone wants it. How they achieve it, they don't know exactly, but they take parts and they take paths. In Islam, Allah has given us the path. So what we have to take from the beginning of the Shaykh's recommendation or introduction is that happiness can be achieved in certain ways. And the ways that we're going to learn are not the ways Allah prohibited. Allah didn't teach us to be happy to that which He sinned. The same way He didn't give us happiness in that which He has prohibited, the same way He didn't give us cure in that which He has prohibited. It's very important because in our world today, what is happiness? We can only think about money, women, cars, alcohol, and then what happens? People have unhappiness, suicide, etc. So the beginning, the Shaykh's telling us the point that everyone agrees to, which is we want happiness. He then says, how then is delight and contentment achieved? Indeed, Allah the Most High is the creator of this world, and He has not left mankind without the means to achieve the guidance and pathway to what the innate desire of man wants and needs. For example, Allah the Most High said of the Quran, هذا بيان للناس وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. This Quran is a clear statement to all the people and a guidance and instruction for those conscious of Allah. So this is in the Quran, Allah is telling us, Surah Al-Imran, ayah 138. So Allah tells us that the Quran itself is a guidance and instruction. The religion of Islam has come to tell us how to worship Allah, but also how to be happy. It wouldn't be any kind of it wouldn't make any sense. Allah would want us to be happy, but didn't tell us how. And this is important for the Muslim because our understanding of happiness goes back to everything that we know to be good or bad. We know good and bad, we know halal and haram through what's in the revelation. Yes, we might be innately able to discern certain things don't make me happy, certain things can make me more happy, but ultimately we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to decide for us. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. Doesn't Allah not know His creation? وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. And He's all subtle, all aware. It's very important. If someone were to say, but I find happiness in haram, that's a perceived happiness, not true. As we're going to find out, true happiness, it can only be sought in the religion or whatever the religion allows of happiness. So now the Shaykh says to proceed. Now he's going to make something very important. He says states of contentment. tranquility, and having a peace of mind and happiness, and doing away with anxiety and depressions are goals we actively seek. Attaining them will translate to our happiness and lead to a goodly life. Reaching them, however, is contingent on three main causes. Now the Shaykh is going to show us to be happy, to be away from depression and anxiety, three ways. There's three angles. First, namely religious. The religious means to gain happiness. And we're going to see that is the most important one, the religious way to happiness. Number two, natural means to happiness. And what does that mean? It means somebody, in order to be happy, they need to have their body and their mental health to be in a good state. For example, in order to be happy, you do need to remove any mawani' or preventatives. For example, a sickness in the body or a mental illness that may come between you and your happiness, so you try to get rid of it. And it's true. The natural body itself has to be in equilibrium to be also in a good state. And lastly, practical things you have to do. So it's not just, I have the religion, I'm free of sickness, and I'm not happy. There are things you got to do to be happy. That's very important. Because now, happiness science teaches us, happiness, as much as we say it's innate, it's also what you do. It's behaviors and actions. Brothers and sisters, this will take away from a lot of people's conception of happiness, which is that if I get this, if I meet so-and-so, if I go there, I'll be happy. Not so fast. Because the Shaykh said practical, the things you have to do as well. And some of them have nothing to do with you. SubhanAllah, it has to do with what you do for others. Imagine, the Shaykh will teach us doing good to others is the way to get happy. The world we live in today, people have to do something for me to be happy. You serve me, you put me in a pedestal, you give me what I want, I'm happy. Maybe, but not fully. And wallahi, this is important because shaping the understanding of happiness is the first step. Everything will go from now on. When we read more of the book, I'm going to bring you the studies as well. From the Quran, Sunnah, A'imma, and then I'll bring the studies where they are. It's all lined up. Now the Shaykh, when he mentioned these three steps, he didn't mention that this is it. He says now none of them which are possible to secure except by one who has believed and submitted themselves to the will of the Creator. So the last one, which is a condition, is Islam, or someone being a Muslim who submitted themselves to Allah. Because if someone, for example, is not religious, but they have the health, the mental well-being, they take the practical steps, they're being even religious in their own way, they're missing the mark. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the Creator, and who is the one who makes people happy and those who are unhappy, He's the only one who will allow you to be happy. So you have to submit to Him. You have to believe in Him. And there's no surprise then, brothers and sisters, religious people are more happy than non-religious people. Is there any surprise there? Right? And we'll give you here a study. Pew Research in 2019, they did a study in America, Pew Research, that religious people have been found to be happier than non-religious people. We're not surprised. But see, some people, we want to be happy. I want to do what it takes to be happy, but they want to miss the foundation. Again, non-Muslim study, and the non-Muslims are coming to that, and I'm going to get to Islam in particular in a second. So what we take from this is someone cannot take all or some aspects and deny the foundation, because you get close, but you're not there yet. And in Islam, happiness is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the person to achieve. But when we come to this point of submission, we should understand that as Muslims, we are fortunate. That's why we need to teach people Islam. Because part of the idea of Islam is Islam submission. But in Islam is also salama. There's safety and peace. With this point, we're not going to negate that other people who are non-Muslim or who are not very religious cannot have a portion of happiness. No one's going to say that. But they're going to have the true happiness. This is the big one. And the Shaykh then says, aside from the believers, others may assume reasons in attaining the causes of happiness from one aspect, yet another cause will escape them from the other side that is stronger, more qualified, and useful. Someone may not be religious and take other means. Maybe they have the natural causes, the practical, but they're missing the religious, so they can have a part of happiness, but not full happiness. Another way of looking at it, they may be temporarily happy, but not long-term. See, some people say, why do I need Islam when I can be happy doing what I love to do in my life? You will be happy, but not for long. Because we know in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates the soul, and creates the body, and the child, the newborn. The angel writes down, Sa'id am shaqi. Are they going to be happy? The meaning of happiness is not the dunya, ikhwani wa akhawat. Where does the happiness go? Sa'id is Jannah, in Jannah, the full happy one. The one who's happy is one in dunya and akhirah. Shaqi, the miserable ones, the miserable for dunya wal akhirah. So the benefit we take is that that's what Allah calls Sa'id and one who's Shaqi. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ سُعِيدُوا. For those people who are truly happy, where are they? They're in Jannah. And those who have the other side, which is Shaqawa, the misery, they're in Jahannam. Think about this. Even the terminology I'll use, Sa'id, for a happy person, not the dunya only. Although you could be Sa'id, right, happy in some angles, we have to think. Some people may say Islam can't have the monopoly on happiness. We're not saying that Islam itself has the monopoly over happiness because I'm a Muslim. It's because the Quran and Sunnah says it, and even now, even science agrees. Muslims are way happier than others. In the Quran and Sunnah, Allah promises, فَمَنِ اتَّبِعَ هُدَايَ. Whoever follows my guidance, فَلَا يُضِلُّ وَلَا يَشْقَى. They won't be misguided nor miserable. Ibn Abbas in Tafsir of Surah Taha, when he mentioned that ayah, he says, whoever follows the Quran and Sunnah, they'll never be unhappy. Never. Brothers and sisters, not a joke. The one who follows the Quran and Sunnah, never. Even their life is upside down. They're never unhappy. We have the non-Muslims or Muslims who are practicing the worldly ways of things. Have everything in there, but they're not happy. That's the first ayah we can relate to. And this is a very important. Surah Taha, ayah 123. And this is important. This is why the Shaykh says, aside from the believers, he's talking from this angle. Because if someone will come to you and say, I'm happy when I do what I love to do in my life, my profession, we say, you have a type of happiness. But when you go to sleep at night, you're not happy in the truest sense. Because if tomorrow you would die, you don't know what's going to happen to you. You can't even guarantee yourself that you're going to go to Jannah because you don't have anything to hold. In fact, many people are worldly or happy, but behind closed doors, they're not. And we also know the hadith of Suhaib, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, which we'll get to later. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned the amazing affair of the believer. When they're given, they're grateful, and when they don't have, they're patient. وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ لِأَحَدٍ إِلَّا لِمُؤْمِنٍ. Take this, that's not for anyone except for the believer, Hadith Muslim. So when people today may ask you, I can find happiness in other ways, we say subjectively, but not objectively. Because objective happiness comes from the idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being in your life. With that being said, Islam doesn't come to tell us happiness is only in the religious side of things. Because some Muslims may think happiness, it means I'm just praying and that's it. But the human is complicated. For example, you're praying, you're happy. But if you're hungry and you're praying, you're not the same as one who ate and he's praying. He's more fulfilled. And that's not a knock on the salah. What is it teaching you? Human beings are the way that we are. We have certain conditions as well. The ulama, they understand this. Islam has come to fulfill all of that. That's why when you're hungry, do you pray salah or you eat dinner first? Huh? Sunnah is, eat the dinner first. Not against Islam. And I'm going to mention now this point because some people think that happiness is without dunya entirely, which is not true. But if you were to now make a hierarchy and prioritize, it's deen first. That's the true happiness and the true factor. Then the dunya stuff, and then the things that you're going to do to be so happy. So we have to combine Islam's holistic religion. And we're trying to remove the idea that someone will come and say that if you try to do any form of happiness besides Salah and Quran, you're not truly happy. No, that's the essence of happiness, and there's other ways also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us happy. So before continuing, let's mention some proofs for this. So we mentioned the religious angle of happiness and the believer truly happy. And the foundations of happiness is Islam. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he wrote, Al-Imanu billahi wa rasulihi huwa jima'u sa'ada wa asluha. That belief in Allah and His Messenger is the culmination of happiness and its foundation. This is his book in the Kitab al-Jumu'ah Fatawa, volume 20, page 193. Iman in Allah and His Messenger is the culmination of happiness and its origin. And again, he has proof for this in the Quran and Sunnah. We'll get to it. So the religious side we understand. How about the worldly side? And someone may say, if I have a little bit more money, I'll be happy. And we're not going to deny that. Yes, maybe if you had a little bit of money, you'd be more happy. Hadith Sa'id ibn Waqas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أربع من السعادة. Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said 4 things are from happiness. المرأة الصالحة, a righteous wife. والمسكن الواسع, and a spacious home. والجار الصالح, a righteous neighbor. ومركب حني, and a comfortable ride. وأربع من الشقاء الجار السوء والمرأة السوء والمركب السوء ومسكن ضيق. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 4 things are from happiness: a righteous wife, a spacious home, a righteous neighbor, a comfortable ride. In today's world, a comfortable car. Abdur-Rahmaan, Hadith, Sahih al-Targhib al-Albani, 2576. And 4 things are from unhappiness, which is the opposite, which is bad neighbor, a bad wife, or means in bad manners and religion, a bad riding animal or vehicle, and lastly, a restricted house or restricted dwelling. This hadith, all the Prophet mentioned ﷺ, besides the righteous wife, are material. What did we take from that? Material happiness, juz'un min as-sa'ada, part of happiness. Someone come today and tries to take that out of life. How is that going to work? When Allah tells us in the Quran, go and walk in the back of the earth, go and travel and make your provisions. For what benefit? Not only to pay your bills, but also to enjoy it. قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ Who made haram Allah's adornment and His bounty? So Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, when he was asked about this hadith, he said this is a part of happiness. And this also responds to those who think it's all happiness. Right? In our world today, you're told, nice house, nice wife, nice car, then you're happy. Well, studies show that person is still not happy. Maybe they might be suicidal even, subhanAllah, with all that. Not happy yet. Because something's missing. And we see here, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what he said here, does it contradict the hadith Suhaib or others in the ayat in the Quran? No. One type of happiness, the origin of the happiness. Iman billahi wa rasul changes everything. And so here, the ulama, when they explain this hadith, like Imam al-Munawi, rahimahullah, I just want to comment on one aspect, which was the maskan, al-maskan wasi'. Somebody will say, what does that mean? Like, you need a mansion, any palace? He says it depends on the person, their family. What could be restrictive to one is spacious to the other. كذلك. Because someone think, hey, I need a mansion. Maybe you by yourself. What are you going to do with that? That could make you not happy. Because you're going to have to clean that. Non-Muslims, they learn this today. Or someone could be a family, maybe moderate or big size. They have a small home, but they're happy with it. See? Doesn't go against this. Because we don't want everyone to go from here and say, nah, brother, I have to get a mansion. I have to buy a home. I'm not saying that. I'm not telling you that. I'm just telling you what makes people happy. From here, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching us an aspect of happiness. So, if we understand that happiness, the religious side of things, the worldly side of things, and the practical, which is what do you do to make yourself happy? What habits and behaviors do you have? For example, gratitude and thankfulness and service to others all make people someone happy. You see, today someone may think, if I want to be happy, I need the opposite. But we'll learn happiness also comes from what you do. From here, completing what Imam Sa'di was saying there, he says at the end of the chapter there, in the introduction, I will mention in this treatise of mine the ways and means to achieve this lofty goal that is universally requested. Among the causes for happiness are those that have been weighted wisely and well trodden. Among the causes for misery are those that have also been noted and recognized. And then there are those practices mixed with both causes of happiness and misery as for whatever Allah has accorded. And indeed, Allah is the one who grants opportunities and means and assists with goodness and prevents from evil. So this is the author's introduction. So we will stop with the reading from there. But I want to mention a few more things before we finish, which is how, for Muslims particularly, Islam is the greatest source of our happiness. And only a Muslim would know that. A non-Muslim can see from afar. But if they're not a Muslim, they won't have that same kind of experience. The Shahada and Islam and Tawheed, it fills a gap in the heart that can't be filled with anything else. And to prove to you this, interestingly, there's a study in 2019 by non-Muslims in Germany, published in American Psychological Association, that found Muslims report the highest levels of life satisfaction and oneness and happiness. Again, this is like a study everyone is allowed to report. The Catholics reported less than us. You're self-reporting. And we'll still reach the highest. Which means that even if we were to say that we don't know if most religious people are as happy as they claim, why are people, or other than Muslims, reporting less than we are? It means a Muslim has problems too. We have issues, but we're reporting higher levels of happiness because we're living according to our purpose. One of the biggest foundations of happiness is to live in accordance to the values and purposes you believe in. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah only created the jinn and ins to worship Him. If you worship Allah, then you'll be happy. Because that's why you're created. If someone is subjectively happy, they put another goal. I'm going to be a good engineer, a good accountant. I'm going to be a good athlete. You may be happy when you achieve your goal, but that's not what you were created. So you can see that someone might say, how come Islam makes you happier? Because Islam is the religion of Allah, and Allah created us to worship Him, and when you worship Allah, He promised to be happy. You won't be unhappy. So this is, subhanAllah, extremely interesting and very powerful. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, we don't understand. If you talk to someone who's not a Muslim, you mention these things they can only see from afar. But when they become Muslim, and I listen to these stories, and sometimes the reverts, when they come to Islam, what they say about Islam, what it does for them, you always notice it goes back to tranquility, peace, and happiness. It's not always the rational arguments of Islam. They look to how I felt, how I slept, how I dealt with others. This is what brought me to Islam. What Islam does for my peace of mind. Whereas us, we have this, but we don't realize it. And as a statement usually goes, we're not grateful for that which you have, or you take it lightly. On top of this, as Muslims, we should also know, Allah promised the Muslim to be happy. We're going to talk about this ayah later, but it's in Surah An-Nahl, ayah 97. Whoever does righteous deed, whether male or female, and while they are the believer, will surely cause them to live a good life. We're going to explain that. The Shaykh is going to bring that later. And to close for today's lesson, the reason why Islam and religion makes you the most happy is that the other means of happiness, they feel certain aspects of your life. For example, we said having a nice house will make you happy because it feels that desire you have in you to have a nice spacious house, your family, more comfort. Same thing, righteous wife, she will benefit you in the dunya and the deen, help you with your worldly life, encourage you khair. Same thing with a good neighbor, right? Because a good neighbor will be nice to you, won't harm you. And a good comfortable ride, it's easy to get to places. And the ulama, they explain these things, but those are material. You may have all of that and you still feel something's missing. And this is why so many people, when they get wealthier, this is when they hit the plateau and problems really start. Because many of us, we're not at that ultra level of richness, or we're not millionaires or billionaires, or we're not at maybe say the pinnacle of what it could be of worldly success and wealth. When you reach the top and you're still feeling down, that's where the problem is. But when you're in the down looking up or on the way up, you can justify your lack of happiness on different stressors. You can say, this happened in my work, this is problem, the house. You can make excuses and you will let go. But when people reach the top and they're still not feeling good, the irony, and it's called the paradox of affluence, the richer people get, the more likely they commit suicide and fall into depression. Something that, again, it doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. But there's a statement Imam Ibn Qayyim teaches us that can teach us a lesson. Because it's not the only Western world who are ultra rich, right? We have ultra rich people in the Arab world and the Muslim world all across. But we don't find them to have high rates of suicide. Following, brothers? People today see material wealth, they get to the top. You get to the top, you might not be happy. You might even feel like you don't want to live. But we have in the parallel world Muslims who have more wealth than some of those people, those celebrities. Because we always forget that our Muslim ummah, we're very wealthy as individuals, maybe our families versus maybe each person. We have ultra rich. We have to always remember that. We think celebrities ultra. We have ultra rich on the other side. But their quality of life is higher. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah wrote in Madarij Salikin something powerful. He said, "Inna fil qalbi sha'athun." In the heart, there's a type of distraction, an annoyance, a scattering. La yalummuhu illa al-iqbalu ala Allah. It never will be closed and gathered together except by turning towards Allah. There's a hole there. Imagine someone could have everything and he still feels I'm everywhere. I'm all over the place. But when you're a Muslim and you practice Islam, you could be maybe not organized, but Allah will bring everything together for you. It's a hadith. We know this. But imagine this statement Ibn Qayyim saying is so interesting. Because today when we look at the issue of the opposite of happiness, which is depression and sadness, irreligious people are more likely to commit suicide, more into the depression and the meaninglessness of life, especially the atheist crowd. And the Muslims, when they get material wealth and we're told there's going to be happiness, part of it got to complete the story. And that's my advice, because we have amongst our own community those who, they want to be happy, they gain everything, and then turn around, they just come back to the masjid. They come back to the Quran, they come back to Salah, things that they thought they were going to be in their way of happiness. And in the Tariq of Islam, the history of Islam, maybe next week we'll mention some of the great umara, the great people who are rulers, who left it all, as they say, right, for the sake of Allah. And it's very important. And on this point as well, I want to touch on something, that if someone is righteous and they're happy and they have the worldly life, that's a ni'mah min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They should thank Allah. Because the person who Allah blesses with material wealth to reach those aspects of happiness, they have a certain duty, which is thankfulness and gratitude. And those who don't have that, but they still have their Islam intact in their religion, they have to have patience. Both are for them. And both are ibadah. Because on the other side of things, when you have more and you are being blessed by Allah and you have religion, Allah also subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you to do more. And it's important that sometimes we may ask ourselves, is happiness and wealth correlated? Yes. But the condition we keep mentioning is the deen. Hadith, I'm finished with this hadith. Amr ibn As, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told him, Ni'mul malu salih li rajul salih. How good is good money for who? A righteous man. Oh, subhanAllah. Look at the hadith. Look at the two he paired. Righteous money, halal, and righteous man or woman. Not halal money, bad man. Or haram money, good man. Or haram money and bad man. Allah ta'ala, that's the worst. And we've got to think about this deeply, because in our society, and when we read the Shaykh's book, we're going to deprogram a lot of the things we're taught subconsciously in schools, at work. If you have money, you're happy. Not true. Or if you have money, that's it. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the greatest paradigm of happiness. His Sahaba. And we'll see how they dealt with both challenges of having and not having. And inshallah, as we read the book, it's something you can share with others. Inshallah, even if you get the book, it's easy to read for anybody. Bi-idhnillah ta'ala. We'll stop with this much. And next week we'll go from chapter 1 or step 1. Anyone has any questions, inshallah, we'll take. Yes. Imam Ibn Qayyim said, Inna fil qalbi sha'athun. In the heart there is a type of distraction or scatteredness. La yalummuhu. It will never be gathered together. Illa al-iqbalu ala Allah. Right? Except by iqbal, turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Madarij salikin. And what that means is that, in the hadith, another hadith, we know, hadith Abu Hurairah, hadith Zayd, that if one whose goal is the dunya, that's what's going to happen. When your goal is the Jannah, the goal is the Akhirah, what happens? Jama' Allahu shamlahu. Allah will gather your affairs for you. How many of us can be witnesses? We can say 100% happened in your own life. You're all over the place. So you start praying more, Allah brought it all together. When you start doing ibadah, ta'ah, as we're going to get to obedience, then everything starts lining up. But before that, it was everywhere and anywhere. Especially in the heart. And that's the part that's interesting, because it's not about what's in the hand, it's the heart. Somebody could be living in a mansion crying in depression. Another person could be in a jail cell and just be happy. And that's why Ibn Qayyim said that when Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah's famous statement, what can my enemies do to me, until the end of it, Ibn Taymiyyah is in jail. He's the happiest of people. Ibn Qayyim will talk about that, those instances where he went to Ibn Taymiyyah for encouragement. He found his situation happiest. That he has the most problems. So it's very important. Muslims can take a lot in this, because with COVID, there's a lot of these issues. COVID-19 has brought a lot of these discussions to light. Inshallah, as we go along, we'll just try to add them together to the book. Anyone else have anything? Yes, brother. Alaykum salam. So we're going to get to this. The brother's asking about one of the things the Shaykh mentions, one of the chapters, and Carnegie mentions it first. And one of the chapters, Imam Sa'di takes from that page 43 of his book, of our book of the English translation, expect ingratitude. People are not grateful. You should know that. وَقَلِيلٌ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الشَّكُورِ. And so the believers themselves, they don't expect to do good and everyone's going to give you the applause. And we're going to notice that if you take that away, that expectation, a lot of happiness comes. But if you walk around, if you did good and everyone just forgot, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. That's the ayah he uses, and we're going to get to it. It's very powerful. And Carnegie is saying this. And Imam Sa'di takes from it and he brings the ayah to prove it. It's very powerful because, again, we'll get to it later. Cognitive, one of the problems of the cognitions is expectations and the shoulds. If you walk around with expectations of others that you're not realistic or not Islamic, you'll always be unhappy. Mathalan, someone believes that's so special. When you walk in the masjid, someone has to shake your hand directly. And if you walk around like this, you're going to be crying all day. Because not everyone's going to come and shake your hand, right? Or you walk around with the idea that you're more important than you think you are. Every Muslim is important. Every Muslim is valuable. But what happens with this unrealistic expectation of others? More likely to be disappointed. But the Shaykh is going to talk about the nature of human beings as well. So when we get to it, we'll explain in more detail. But it's very powerful. Even just reading the book, like going over the chapters, you see it's a lot of fawaid, a lot of good benefits. So inshallah, I encourage you, brothers, as we go home, just read the book. It's really short. You will like it. Yes. So we read the hadith again. The brother's asking hadith. Abu Sa'ad bin Abi Waqas, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Arba'un min as-sa'ada. 4 things are from happiness. Al-mar'atu salihah, the righteous wife. Wal-maskanu al-wasi'u, and the spacious home. And Munawi explains the spacious home is the one that has a lot of amenities, or more amenities that you can benefit from, or space. وَالْجَارُ الصَّالِحُ, and the righteous neighbor. وَالْمَرْكَبُ الْهَنِيءُ, and a comfortable ride. So that time a riding animal, but by extension today the car. And the last part, hadith, أَرْبَعٌ مِنَ الشَّقَاءِ الْجَارُ السُّوءُ وَالْمَرْأَةُ السُّوءُ وَالْمَرْكَبُ السُّوءُ وَالْمَسْكَنُ السُّوءُ. So وَالْمَسْكَنُ ضَيِّقُ. So from this is the hadith Sahih al-Targhib 2576. Inshallah, someone can go back there and they could read from there. Any other last question? Yes, brother. So Dale Carnegie's book, it's entitled How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's PDF, you can find it. And there's also the other book, How to Win Friends and Influence Others. It's also a very good book. Yes. So that's a good point. The brother's asking, some self-help books are leaning towards a particular ideology. Especially a lot of self-help people are into New Age spiritualism, which is one of the problems with the whole industry. That's an aqidah that's corrupted. Right? Pantheism and a lot of Taoism and Buddhism and other things. So someone's reading, he has to be careful from the beginning. Who's the author? What are they trying to read? But if there's some nonsense in it, but some benefit, you can take the benefit and share it. But if you're going to recommend it, you should recommend a book which you feel like comfortable with, or like we said, with disclaimers. This book has issues. A lot of times you notice some of the best of them are those which are evidence-based. As the books that we mentioned before, some of them are just like more to do with stories, or like The Secret, for example, that book. You avoid those altogether. There's nothing in there that is science-based. It's all religious. So you try to pick the ones that are science-based to benefit from them. And that's why if you read and nothing wrong with it or benefit, you can share it. But you also have to be wary that sometimes when you do read these books, sometimes these people, they want you to buy their books. So, I have some experience of reading them. You find that some of them just want you to buy the book, or they're trying to profit off your weakness. So, for example, if you need help on this, they always have a book for you. But that doesn't mean that they're also successful in that. But at the end of the day, it's the benefit we take. If there's nothing wrong with it, or if you worry. But that's why, like these books, they're classics. Some of the other ones, we have to be careful. Maybe another time we'll talk about this in particular, because some of the ulama have categorized this new aqeedah and refuted it. This New Age stuff is very popular. And unfortunately, this Muslim community is very popular as well. A lot of Muslims are getting into it. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. I don't want to take more time. Inshallah, next week we'll begin from the first chapter, or step number 1. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.